is Colonel Mike McCallister. How are you today? Good, good. And what just to renew or refresh your mind with the rules, you have 10 minutes in opening remarks, and then you'll be able to stand here, and then you must move there. You may not stand, you must sit. You may drink water. And I will sit there and I will ask you questions, and you have 90 seconds to respond. Okay? And so let me introduce Colonel Mike McCallister. He is a retired U.S. Army colonel, entrepreneur and businessman, university instructor of graduate business management, and conservative U.S. Senate candidate. Colonel McCallister has 33 years total military service in the Army National Guard, Reserves, and active duty in both enlisted and commissioned officer ranks. He served as the Deputy Chief of Training, Doctrine, and Education at the United States Special Operations Command, which leads Department of Defense planning against terrorists and trains and oversees Special Operation Forces worldwide. Colonel McCallister has served on strategic Pentagon committees, including the Executive Steering Group for the Training and Transformation Initiative, which directed the transition of the Department of Defense into a 21st century fighting force focused on the global threats facing America today. Colonel McCallister is a university instructor and served as the lead faculty in a global MBA curriculum, teaching global business operations, strategy, and policy. He holds a BS in agriculture from Southeast Missouri State University, PhD in management from the Union Institute in Cincinnati, and is a graduate of the Command and General Staff College, the Army War College Defense Strategy Curriculum, and the Air War College. Additionally, he has completed the Harvard University program on senior executive leadership. He has one son who he raised as a single parent, and his father, a World War II veteran, live in Bradenton, Florida. Colonel McCallister, please.
I think Barb's going to test me here since I'm going to be 60 this year. I think this moving over there and sitting down is just to see. All right, we're going to try to have a little fun today. I'm not going to stand up here and talk about myself a whole lot. We're going to talk about our country and the serious threats we face, and talk about how we're going to maybe make things better. But what a great looking group of Americans. And as I look around, I can understand why the liberals are getting concerned. You guys are already suiting up and getting out there. As she said, my name's Mike McCallister. I'm God-fearing, American-loving, flag-waving, gun-owning, conservative businessman and retired colonel. I want to recognize a few groups here today, the ladies. And I do this everywhere I go, but it's just, as you travel the state, the role and leadership you're playing is just phenomenal. 9/12 leaders, Tea Party leaders, REC leaders, obviously the women's organization leaders, and you're really, really making a tremendous contribution. I was going to recognize the seniors, but I don't see any. But you're our national heritage. You built this country with your blood and your sweat and your tears, and we simply can't let it get away. And we got to restore America to the greatness you created and keep it there. And I want to recognize all of our veterans and our veterans' families. And without question, you're our nation's heroes. And you've put it all on the line just for us all to be here. You know, America is still the world's greatest country. There's no question about it. And we're the last true global military power and protect our freedom and democracy around the world. And as a fairly recently retired colonel, I'm proud to report to you that we still have and will continue to have the very finest young seamen, airmen, soldiers, and Marines of any country on the planet protecting us. And we got to make sure Washington gives them everything they need to fight and win and survive in battle. You know, Americans never need to go anywhere on the planet and hang their head. This country, with its most precious blood, has saved the free world more than once. And I think we're all tired of a president standing on foreign soil, bowing to Muslim kings, apologizing to the world for who and what we are. And that's going to end in 2012. You hear people say no one likes America anymore. I have graduate students, they're in their 20s and 30s and 40s. And they'll say, nobody likes America anymore, blah, blah, blah. So I'll go up to the blackboard and say, well, let's list the 10 countries everybody likes. And guess what? They can't name any. And then I like to refer to a British gentleman who said it most eloquently once. perhaps the best way to take measure of a country is how many people want in and how many want out. You know, I think the events of the recent weeks have sent a clear message to the world that any country or enemy or threat that wants to try to be a thorn in our side, you feel lucky today, you bring it on. It doesn't matter how long it takes or how much it costs. We will hunt you down and we will eliminate you. I want to talk for a minute about this race next year. We got one statewide race, U.S. Senate. Now, you know, Florida has 120 part-time state House members and 40 part-time state senators. But we only have 2 U.S. senators. And they have a very unique role that in many ways is totally separate from what we need at our state, local, county levels. We need everyone. But these guys are in many ways our last line of defense of what comes out of the executive office of the president. You know, our state and local officials are very, very seldomly involved in national security, national defense, foreign policy, U.S. vital interest. But when we look at the U.S. Senate, only the U.S. Senate confirms our senior military leaders of full colonels, generals, and admirals. And for me, if you're going to decide if someone should be a colonel or a general or an admiral, I think you need to really know what they do. And only the U.S. Senate confirms our ambassadors and our senior State Department officials. And this is our forward presence. If you don't have serious training and education and some experience in the collaboration and integration of all of the U.S. operations globally and around the world with our vital interests in our foreign policy and our military operations, I'm not sure you're the best qualified to decide who should be senior State Department officials and ambassadors. And only the U.S. senators confirm our treaties. And folks, these commit us not just politically, but economically and militarily. And a lot of the problems we have in this country right now go back to these treaty commitments. And we can start with Libya. And only the U.S. Senate confirms the presidential cabinet. And if you look, there's a close alignment of the cabinet positions and the committees in the U.S. Senate. And there's a reason why. And when we look at the cabinet, that's 39 guys right now that he has put in there as czars that need to go away. It's unconstitutional. We got to get back to having a cabinet. And only the U.S. Senate confirms our federal judges, and I think we need to do a lot better at that. I want to identify for a minute these serious threats our country's against. Right now, the whole buzzwords in the media and politics is spending and balance the budget. Yes, this is a serious problem, but my friends, it's going to take a lot more than cutting spending in this country to save it. Yes, we got uncontrolled. When I look at the internal threats, we have uncontrolled spending by the federal government. But we have union management not accepting the realities of a competitive global world, liberal judges making up their rules as they go, giving our country away, a failing education system that's not keeping up with global education, federal government that doesn't recognize the rights of our states and our citizens, restrictive laws and lawsuits that restrict American entrepreneurship and productivity, communism still working within our country to destroy the family values, illegal immigration coming across, and it's a lot more than just farm workers, terrorism, money laundering, drug trafficking, a radical Islamic aggression in our schools and our textbooks and our courts, and of course growing black market for phony IDs and even voter registration, and the liberal element in our country that doesn't want to face any of this. Externally, unfair trade practices by global countries such as China and Brazil, stealing patents, phony currency devaluations to get competitive pricing advantages in a global marketplace. The proliferation globally of weapons of mass destruction. The former Soviet Union goes down, had the biggest WD arsenal in the world. You got Mideast oil countries with a lot of money to spend that want those weapons, and I think you can see how that deal could be brokered. This global war on terror. I worked in the center where we ran the global war on terror. My friends, it's ugly. I can remember doing some things that are quite scary. And we think about Al-Qaeda. They're not going to go away. Hezbollah, Hamas. Vladimir Putin and the former Soviet Union and his vision to return them to their former days of glory and power. The global black market on drugs, money laundering, drug trafficking. The terrorists have to pay their bills too. Cyber espionage of our secrets. And pirates operating on the open seas. And of course, the world's one government idea with Agenda 21 in the UN trying to run our country and our lives. So how are we going to face these threats? Well, we need to put people in the U.S. Senate that have serious credentials in education and training and real-world operations of these things. I think back about Ronald Reagan. Part of my time I served under him, he had it right. You threaten us, we win, you lose. We need less regulation. When people talk about my agenda, when I go to Washington, my legislative agenda, I get nervous. We got too many laws now. And we need a comprehensive and integrated national security policy that brings to bear all elements and resources of national power that we can protect our country and our interest. And I can stay afterwards and talk with you all about that. I can't do it in 10 minutes. Where do we go from here? We've got to continue this fight to take our country back and end these liberal giveaways. Now, as a commissioned officer of the United States military, I took that oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We need our judges, our Congress, and our President to respect and defend the Constitution, and we've got to replace the ones that aren't doing what's right for America and our future generations. I get asked about the Second 10th Amendment. I think we need a sign at every harbor, airport, and road enter in Florida. You're entering a 10th Amendment owned and operated state, and justice will be served with the Second Amendment. We need to trash Obama economics that's doubled our debt and give us 9 and 10% unemployment, and throw the Obama health care plan and high-speed rail in the trash for good. We need to get the legal handcuffs off the American worker and competitive spirit and restore the American family as the pillar of our society. And we need to keep the ownership of America in the hands of American citizens and out of the hands of our federal government, out of the hands of China, and out of the hands of the United Nations. We need to stop using government to collect union dues and paychecks, and we need to stop giving our money away for everything and save Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And I would fire Janet Napolitano and get someone running Homeland Security that understands their jobs to protect American citizens and not those that are here illegally. I think we need a full audit of the Federal Reserve. We need to stop this dumbing down of America, and we need to get the pride of American history, the teaching of the Constitution, the flag, and the Pledge of Allegiance back in our schools. We need to stop this political correctness and coddling of Islamic radicals. They want to kill us. We cannot allow Sharia law, courts, or banks in this country. We've got to support Israel as the only democracy and our ally in the Middle East. We've got to secure our borders. And we need the world to understand that we have bought and paid for this country with our most precious blood. And just because you show up, we don't owe you anything. You want to be here, you got to be here legally. You want to work here, you need to be in the tax system. You want to live here, you need to be a contributor, not a taker. And you want to be a citizen, we have a process that you must follow that many have. And for me, I'd like to see you learn to speak English. My friends, this is still the land of the free, the home of the brave, and one nation under God. And this country must be protected and preserved. And failure is simply not an option. Americans have always fought and won once we know what they're up against. Thank you. This is the dexterity test, right? This is where I have to go from here.
This is where you see if you remember what you're supposed to do. And you take the microphone with you.
You're adding things. She's picking on me because I'm going to be 60 this year.
Okay, first question. I know he's already answered. You have 90 seconds to answer each question. All right, the first question. Will you pledge to fully repeal Obamacare?
Yeah, it's unconstitutional. Absolutely. I pledge to repeal Obamacare.
Right.
It's unconstitutional. It needs to go away.
Second question. We're in a war on terror. Who are we fighting?
Yeah, we're fighting radical Islam. And, you know, I look back and I worked in the Center for Operations Plans and Policy in the War on Terror at U.S. Special Operations Command, where they are the lead element globally. And it's ugly. I've gone into other countries, had to work with their military operations for counterterrorism training. Folks, it's not a country this time where they wear a uniform. It's a global war. We were operating in 120 nations. And we need to realize that these people are patient and they are not just going to go away. Yes, we eliminated Osama bin Laden, but the radical Islamic movement is not at an end. We will have to continue to protect ourselves.
We do need health care reform. What would be your plan?
Well, when we look at health care, you know, constitutionally, I guess they can try to hide it under that as part of the welfare of the country. But I think the first thing we need to do is we need to strategically align the healthcare system. I work in healthcare. I've worked with every medical school and teaching hospital in Florida. And we take a look at, number one, we need tort reform. And it's amazing to me how in this state we can't get that done. But it costs the doctors a lot of money for their insurance, costs the providers, so we got to get rid of tort reform. And we need to get where doctors and hospitals don't have to prescribe duplicative or unnecessary tests just to get paid or to avoid lawsuits. And we need to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. So I think the first thing we got to do is create an environment that will help cut these costs and let private sector provide the services.
We all know the Paul Ryan plan does not affect anyone 55 years and older with regards to Medicare. Do you endorse the Paul Ryan plan, and why or why not?
Yeah, I know there's a lot being said about this, and only this person or this person or this person supports the Ryan plan. And it's like I said at Palm Beach REC a couple weeks ago and many other times. If we have to vote yes or no, I vote yes for the Ryan plan. If we have the luxury of time to tweak it a little, to make it maybe for me what might be more fair for someone 54 or 53, I would like to do that. But first, I support it. I would vote for it. If we have the opportunity to make it a little different, I would, in that if you're 53 and you've been working since you're 21 and you've already been contributing for 30 years, I'd like to give you some consideration and maybe have a little bit of a sliding scale in there. But we got to do something. Until we have a better product, I would vote for the Ryan plan. I would just want to make sure all options are looked at and considered.
What do you think is the biggest problem with our economy?
Folks, this is a complex problem. I've chaired a lot of MBA thesis research on offshoring and outsourcing. I was the lead faculty in the Global MBA for Phoenix. We got to recognize the fact, yeah, our government spending is a problem. We got to fix that. But we're 5% of the world, and we're now competing against the other 95% of the world everywhere on the planet. We look at China, 1.2 billion people. Asia has 57% of the world, by the way, with China and India having 40%. China is now, by many measures, the largest producer of goods on the planet, the largest exporter. They have $5,000 a year labor for unskilled jobs, and they have virtually no patent laws. What they do is they reach out and they just steal people's patents. They are the industrialized nations. And most companies will tell you their two biggest costs are personnel burden or labor and the research and development of their products. We're going to have to align with the other industrialized nations to get countries like China and Brazil in our own hemisphere from stealing our research and development and robbing us of our economic development and our economic power. That's got to happen, and we need better treaties and trade agreements, which then we go back to the U.S. Senate. But we got to protect our investment. We need high-tech industry in this country, and we need to align all the companies in America into the value chain of the market in which they compete in, and give rewards to companies for hiring U.S. companies and keep the jobs here and bring high-tech manufacturing here and better train our workforce for the jobs of the future. We are going to have to upgrade our education.
Will you sign a pledge that you will not support any form of fixed rail public transportation?
Any form of public transportation? Would you include
fixed
taxis
rail.
and fixed rail? Yes, I'm against the fixed rail. I think that we can look at the rail that we have in Florida, and it's very unproductive. You can go look at it. Nobody's riding on it. It also concerns me. Is this one of the steps to kind of herd us into our little communities in this one world government concept? And we got to stop that. Yeah. Do I get to take all my extra time at the end?
No. You're just giving up free airtime. What are we going to do to eliminate our dependence on foreign oil?
You know, a lot of this is by design. It's really pretty simple. Number one, we need to lift the ban on onshore drilling. We need to look at offshore drilling and let our companies compete in that marketplace as well, especially when you get outside the 200-mile zone where we can't control it. We're going to have to increase our domestic oil production as well as our refinery capacity, because just pumping the oil out of the ground is not going to help. So we got to refine it as well. We need to get the Department of Energy and the EPA facilitating this process instead of constantly blocking it. And then I think for a lot of our domestic use that's non-vehicular, we need more nuclear energy as well. We're only about 19%. And it's proven itself very, very well over many decades. Going back to the nuclear submarines. Those guys have been riding nuclear submarines around for 50 or 60 years and never had a single incident.
Should there be public unions?
I am not a proponent of unions in government. And I think that's the wrong place. I think government employees are there to provide a service to the citizens. And I certainly don't like the idea of the government collecting union dues and paychecks.
Tell us your philosophy on subsidies and earmarks.
Yeah, it's simple. Don't need them. And I'm a farmer. I have a nursery license. So, I mean, even with the agriculture piece, I think that when we look at earmarks, and I've played the little earmark game one time, I mean, the way it used to work, and I guess it's probably still very similar, anything under 10 million bucks they could add on and didn't raise a lot of scrutiny. And when I sat on the Pentagon committees, we used to play that little game all the time with the Congress and go in there with a pet program or whatever. You know, it's going to create jobs in somebody's congressional district, and then they can just tack it onto some bill. So we need to stop the earmarks. We need a balanced federal budget amendment that will help alleviate a lot of the long-term issues that we're dealing with right now, like with the debt ceiling. We're going to have to balance our budget. We're going to, you know what, folks, we got to cut our spending, but this country operates off selling products and services. And this is going to go back to, it's like anybody in business knows, you got to manage your budget and cut costs and waste, but you've got to sell more stuff. We've got to do a better job selling our products and our services against the other 95% of the world. And a lot of that's going to come back to having a better trained workforce, protecting our patents, and having better treaties and trade agreements that are more conducive to U.S. industry and rewarding American companies for hiring American companies. And then we can get the jobs here and keep them here, but we need the high-paid jobs for future generations. We got to compete more effectively in the global economy, just like everybody in business right here in Pinellas or Hillsborough.
There's a budget crunch and you have to reduce spending. Which of these agencies' budgets would you reduce? EPA, DOE, FDA?
Geez, that's a lot of letters. Okay, I got the little book, right? And I look in the little book and I don't see none of those letters in here.
What is your opinion of climate change science?
Yeah, I'd like to think it's more than an opinion. You know, we can go back and do a history of the Earth, and even in geologically, what is the Earth? It's like 4 billion years old, I guess. And in recent times, if we look at it and from those standpoints, we've had coming and going of ice ages. No one can prove scientifically exactly where are we in that right now. And if we start looking at things like cap and trade, which some of our state officials have supported in the past, and we start looking at how that's going to impact, you know, I think they're using the whole environmental deal and global warming just to be an excuse for the redistribution of wealth and controlling how that operates. So I think we need to get rid of cap and trade, and until they have some hard science that clearly demonstrates this threat, then I think we give it all the justice it's due, which right now is pretty minimal. I think there's no conclusive evidence that's been peer-reviewed and agreed upon by a majority of truly credentialed experts.
What then is the purpose of climate change regulations?
I think it's it's kind of like Agenda 21. We hide everything behind it's for the environment, it's going to be good for your kids and your grandkids, and the reality is it's to promote an agenda, and in this particular case, perhaps the redistribution of wealth, and it goes back to what cap and trade was trying to do, and that's just not what we need to be doing. We need hard science that is confirmed, at least by credentialed experts with a plurality, and I'm not seeing any of that. It's an agenda that's not for our well-being. I think in many ways it's science that's not been proven and agreed upon by the majority of experts. And until we have that, it's just a theory that we should not operate on.
Well, you've pretty much answered this, but I'm obligated to ask this next question because everyone else was asked. In attending county commission meetings over the past year, our members have been shocked to discover the implementation of global governance throughout all facets of our local government. Terms such as smart growth, green print, and sustainable development indicate UN-based policies being implemented locally under the general umbrella of Agenda 21. What do you know about Agenda 21?
You know, it's interesting. In the NFL, you ever hear the coaches say it's a copycat league? Well, I'm learning real quick running for office is a copycat league. I've been talking about Agenda 21 since last summer, on tape, on videos. you know, the one world concept and the UN and George Soros. A lot of people, and I've had face-to-face discussions with Pam Bondi about this, and she is aware of it. And I have told the governor to the point that he said, Mike, you say it to me again and I'm going to quit taking your calls. Poor guy, I beat him to death. So he's aware too. But I mean, we got to stop this. I mean, when you really look at it from a constitutional standpoint, I think there's a serious question if it's even constitutional, where they're bypassing our federal government, state governments, and coming right to our communities. But the long-term idea is to decrease population, tell us where we're going to live. That's what a part of the high-speed rail was. And then we start looking at how the treaties come into this. And with the UN, the next thing that's going to happen is they're going to use the UN treaties not just for Agenda 21 to dictate our living conditions, but they're going to try to take away our guns as well. So we got to be way out in front of this and get our public well educated.
And the last question. Are there any conditions under which international law should be considered or applied to the U.S.? For example, for gun control, Sharia law, or parental rights?
No.
Thank you very much.